Well, good afternoon, friends, and welcome. So happy to have you here with me this afternoon. My name is Chris Vallillo, and this afternoon I am doing the very first live streamed Rhodes Scholar performance for the Illinois Humanities Council. And I want to take a moment to thank them for giving me this privilege. I also want to thank the Byron Public Library, where I would normally have been performing right now. But as we all know, we have to shelter in place, and that is important. And we have to work together, and I am very happy to do that. Now, part of this COVID-19 crisis has really shown a light on some unusual aspects of our society and highlighting how important different forms of workers are. And today's program, The Farmer is the Man, Songs of the Farm, really kind of seems to be a poignant reminder of that at this time and place. What I'll be doing is combining songs with a little bit of storytelling, even a Carl Sandburg poem at one point. So I hope you're able to join us and stick around for a while. And again, my deep thanks to Byron Public Library and the Illinois Humanities Council. Now, friends, farming has always been the backbone of rural America. And there is a wide tradition of songs that document and preserve the stories of the hard-working men and women that made this way of life possible. Traditional songs, Dust Bowl ballads, even contemporary songwriters' works. Well, what I would like to do right now is give you an example of some of those, perhaps a slice, if you will, from this cake of music and culture. Now, I've spent the past 35 years in rural Illinois documenting, preserving, and performing many of these songs, and what I want to do today is share some of them with you and hopefully bring back some happy memories to those of you that were born and raised in rural America on a farm. But any of you city slickers that are joining us, well, hopefully I'll give you a little more insight into what it really takes to be a farmer in this day and age. I'm going to start off with a song that was written by one of the great Canadian songwriters of the past century. His name was Stan Rogers. He wrote this beautiful song, The Field Behind the Plow, which will not only give you an insight into farm life, it will quite literally put you in the tractor seat on plowing day. Watch the field behind the plow turn to straight dark rows, feel the trickle in your clothes, blow the dust cake from your nose, hear the tractor's steady roar. Oh, you can't stop now, there's a quarter section more or less to go. And it figures that the rain keeps its own sweet time. You can watch it come for miles, so you guess you got a while. Ease the throttle out a hair, every rod's a gain. There's a victory in every quarter mile. Poor old Kuzik down the road, the heartaches hail and the hoppers brought him down. He gave it up and he left for town. Emmett Pierce the other day, he took a heart attack and he died at 42. You could see it coming on, 'cause he worked as hard as you. In an hour, maybe more, we'll be drenched clear through, but the air is cooler now. Pull your hat brim further down and watch the field behind the plow turn to straight dark rows, put another season's promise in the ground. harvests any good. The money just might cover all the loans, mortgaged all you owe. Buy the kids a winter's coat, take the wife back east for Christmas if you can. All summer she hangs on, but you're so tied to the land. For the good times come and go, but at least there's rain, so it won't be barren ground when September rolls around. Watch the field behind the plow turn to straight dark rows, put another season's promise in the ground. Watch the field behind the plow turn to straight dark rows, put another season's promise in the ground. Alrighty. Now let me just take a moment to mention, I won't be interrupting the show to take a look at the Facebook comments, but I love to hear them. It really helps me realize that we have a live audience. So please feel free to make comments in the comment section. When I'm done, I will go back, read them all, and answer every single one of them. Now, farm life has always been a never-ending cycle of boom years followed by years of bust. And the toughest times of all came in the 1930s, the Dust Bowl, when thousands upon thousands of farmers and their families were driven from their land in what has been called the greatest ecological disaster of the 20th century. And the very worst day of all took place on April the 14th, 1935, the dreaded Black Sunday. Now, friends, on that day, a gigantic dust storm better than 200 miles across came rolling through Oklahoma at 65 miles an hour, carrying dirt from 4 states. They say that when the storm hit, the noise was terrifying. It turned blacker than night. Automobile ignitions failed and cars drove into ditches. Barbed wire fences glowed with static electricity. Radios stopped working. Folks got lost a few feet from their doorways because they simply could not see. Many thought it was the end of the world. Now, in the small town of Pampa, Texas, a 22-year-old musician by the name of Woody Guthrie huddled with his wife, his children, and his neighbors in a room he would later describe as so black you couldn't see your hand in front of your face with the lights on. And in the midst of this chaos, he scribbled down a phrase that folks were saying to one another, believing that it was the end. Well, Woody and those folks did survive. And he would go on and take that phrase and use it as the hook for one of his most popular songs. He used to call this song Dusty Old Dust, but we use that very phrase he wrote down that day. So long, it's been good to know ya. I sung this song and I'll sing it again, of a place where I lived on the wild windy plains in a month called April in a county called Gray. Here's what all of the people there say. They say, so long, been good to know ya, so long, it's been good to know ya, so long, it's been good to know ya, this dusty old dust, it's getting my home. Woody Guthrie wrote songs that were meant to be sung. And if I was with you live today, I would be asking you to help me out on that chorus. But since I am not, I will still ask you to help me out on that chorus if you are so inclined. Nobody else except you is going to hear it. So the chorus is very easy. It's just so long, it's been good to know you. So long, it's been good to know you. So long, it's been good to know you. This dusty old dust is getting my home. It's time to be drifting along. dust storm hit, and it hit like thunder. Dusted us up and it covered us under. It blocked out the traffic and it blocked out the sun. Straight to home all the people did run singing so long. Been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya, this dusty old dust. It's getting my home, and I got to be drifting along. Now the sweethearts, they sat in the dark and they sparked. They hugged and they kissed in that dusty old dark. They sighed, they cried, they hugged and they kissed. Instead of marriage, they talked like this, honey, so long. Been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya, this dusty old dust. It's getting my home, and I got to be drifting along. Now the telephone rang and it jumped off the wall. That was the preacher just making his call. And he said, kind friends, this may be the end, and I got your last chance for salvation from sin. Now the churches was jammed, the churches was packed. That dusty old dust storm, it blew so black that the preacher could not read the words of his text. So he folded his specs and took up that collection, singing so long. Been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya so long. It's been good to know ya, this dusty old dust. It's getting my home, and I got to be drifting along. All right, that's a fine old song. I do enjoy that one. And I always like to send that out to my buddy, Bucky Hawk, who is a specialist in the music of Woody Guthrie and the Dust Bowl era. Hope you're doing well there, Bucky. Now, in the 1980s, I was beginning my career as a singer-songwriter and a folk musician, and I was, of course, in my starving artist days. And I got one of those deals we love. You used to be able to find them out in the country years ago. I had a farmhouse and a deal with the landlord that I paid him $50 a month rent, but I was not to call him when something went wrong. And trust me, friends, he got the better end of the deal on that one. Now, it was a farmhouse outside of a small town called Rushville, Illinois, just before what they call the 3-mile curve. And it was a wonderful place to live. But right about this time, we were seeing the beginning of the family farm crisis. Farms were being foreclosed at a staggering rate. And you could tell that the impact was going to be severe, particularly for the family farmers. Well, right about this time, I used to heat that house with a wood-burning stove. It was late in the fall, and I happened to go out just about sunset to grab an armload of logs to bring in to fire up that wood stove for the evening. And as I did that, I noticed they were pulling into the fields that surrounded that old farmhouse. They had a combine and 2 grain trucks, and they were going to start harvesting. Now, friends, when the time comes for farmers to work, they work until they're done. And that means long hours, very long hours. And as that night progressed, I kept going out every 2 or 3 hours to grab another armload of logs and watched as they continued to combine the corn around that old farmhouse. I don't think they finished up till nearly 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember thinking that this was something we might not be seeing much any longer, a family farm harvesting their crops. So I decided to preserve it in the form of a song. And this is it. This is a fine old tune of mine, Silhouette Against the Stars. Feel the frost on the ground, see the afterglow of sunset settle down, as it turns from dusk to dark on the prairie tonight. By the giant trees in peeling shades of white, the old farmhouse it stands, silhouette against the stars on a chill November night. Hear the howling of the hounds as they call across the fields, and the combines rumbling down the rows. The corn is in, it's time to count the yields. By the strength of their hands, through the generations they have worked these lands, from the fathers to the sons, and on it goes, just as surely as the river flows, and another harvest comes. Silhouette against the stars on a chill November night, hear the howling of the hounds as they call across the fields, and the combines rumbling down the rows. The corn is in, it's time to count the yields. And the grain trucks roll by with their mounds of yellow corn piled high, to the elevators and the fields are bound, and with every bump it showers to the ground, till the roads are lined with gold. Silhouette against the stars on a chill November night, hear the howling of the hounds as they call across the fields, and the combines rumbling down the rows. The corn is in, it's time to count the yields. Now the fields lie in sleep through the weary months of winter cold and deep, beneath frozen waves of drifted snow, till the balmy winds of spring begin to blow, and the cycle starts anew. That was a fine old farmhouse, I'll tell you what. Sadly, they burned it down as soon as I moved out. I don't know if that's a fitting tribute or what to say about that, to be perfectly honest. Well, in 1848, a law is passed in Illinois that will revolutionize life for the farmers and their families. It's called the 2-mile rule. They write a law that states that the Illinois will build a one-room schoolhouse every 2 miles all across the country, so that no child would have to walk farther than 1 mile to receive a free public school education. This would revolutionize life in rural America. I don't know if the kids enjoyed it as much as the parents and teachers did, but we ended up with a generation of some of the most literate and educated people ever raised in America. Now, I was involved learning about one-room schoolhouses way back in the 1980s when I co-wrote a 2-person play with my friend Pam Larson. And if you're watching, Pam, hey, hope you're doing well. And this was based on some of the field work I had done as a folklorist and research she had done. Matter of fact, I believe she had a relative who had been a teacher in the one-room schoolhouse. At any rate, in the process of doing this, we learned about the house names. Schoolhouses were generally built on a piece of donated property. The community came together to build the school, and then they would choose a name. Usually that right went to the person that donated the land. Some of them were quite normal, things like a whole range of different things. Now, before I get into where I'm heading here with this piece of music, which I'm about to do for you, I want to take a time and tell you about one of the folks I interviewed. His name was Lawrence Royer. And Lawrence told me about going to a one-room school outside of Bader, Illinois. It was called the Union School. And when Lawrence was going there, it was announced in the papers that the U.S. Geological Survey would be coming to the area around Bader in order to survey that for the national maps that you can still buy to this very day. Well, a couple of the kids decided that they would pull a prank, and here is what they did. They waited till the night before the surveyors were to come. After it got dark, a group of boys borrowed a ladder from a local farmer, went up to the schoolhouse, put it right up against the front of that building, climbed up on the top of the ladder with a paintbrush and a small bucket of black paint, and all they did was paint a little arch over the two arms of the U, turning the U of Union into an O, making the school the Onion Schoolhouse. Now, I thought that was a pretty good story, but I've learned over the years that, stories adapt and change. They may not necessarily be true. But that afternoon, I happened to go back home. And I own one of those U.S. geological maps. I had just purchased it about 2 months before for that very project. And friends, when I opened it up, and to this very day, you can go to Bader, Illinois, and look for the little one-room school just outside of town, and they still call it the Onion Schoolhouse. Now, let me get back to what I was talking about before. The names of schoolhouses were all over the map. Union was common. Presidents' names, some kind of a natural feature, but some of them were really rather bizarre. And when I was working with Pam to create this show on one-room schoolhouses, we found this research book with hundreds and hundreds of names of actual one-room schoolhouses from western Illinois, eastern Missouri, and eastern Iowa. So we decided the only thing you could do is create a song using these names. To play this song, I will use an instrument well known and loved in the one-room schoolhouse. It's an old-time instrument with many, many names. I'll see if you can get a better look at it there. They call it a Jew's harp, a jaw harp, a mouth harp, a frog fiddle, a Snoopy harp, an Arkansas harp, a gewgaw, a geegaw, a drumbla, or the Tennessee tooth crasher if you ever played it the wrong way. Many a one-room schoolhouse teacher told me that they had cigar boxes full of these things they'd taken from kids. So I'm going to use this instrument to do a song we created that is nothing but one-room schoolhouses. The Schoolhouse Song. Heading down the road to the one-room school where there's reading and the writing and the golden rule, named after people and places and things, some quite common and some just strange. There was Lickskillet, Puckerbrush, Tawapatee, Otter, Bent Lake, Wide Awake and Old Toad Holler, Pig Knoll, Duckwater, Gravelly Run, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Washington. Sugar Grove, Cranberry, Strawberry, Hackberry, Lime City, Orange City, Honey Creek, and Cherry, Potato Point, Peach Blossom, Pear Ridge, Pancake, Coffee Creek, Center Sandwich, Apple Pie, and my personal favorite, Bellyache. Prudence Park, Stone Junk, Temperance Hill, Brewery Hill, Happy Quarters, Four Corners, Poor Quarters, Potterville, White Flock, Hemlock, Ragtop, Stove Prairie, Waggy, Froggy, Bogus, and Larry. White Oak, Red Oak, Cottonwood, and Hickory, Elm Grove, Maple Grove, Pine Grove, and Harmony, Mud College, Muddy Corners, Muddy Lane, Mudacre, Limbo, Nebo, Poe, and Shaker. Strange or different, simple or the same, because it doesn't really matter because it's only just a name. All right, there you go. Now, if you ever try to play one of these jaw harp things, be very careful, because if you don't play it exactly right, friends, it will hurt you bad. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that in the 1980s, I was involved documenting the oldest living musicians in rural Illinois. And in the process of meeting and interviewing these folks, I learned wonderful stories and a great deal about life on the farm back before the days of television and radio and, God forbid, live streaming internet. And I heard stories about how farm families worked from sunrise to sunset. No matter how young you are, you chipped in. I heard of a sense of family and community that was much more powerful than we have today. Now, there were hardships. Nobody seemed to have much cash money of any kind. But one thing that always struck me, I didn't hear about people going hungry. Not when farms were essentially self-sustaining. You had a garden that would rival anything you see in Midwest Living magazine today. Many farms had small orchards. They raised hogs for ham and sausage and bacon, cows for milking. So you were always well fed if you worked on a farm, even if you had to work hard to get it. Now, it brought to mind a song that was written by Greg Brown from over in Iowa. It's a wonderful song that kind of takes that sentiment to heart. And if you have ever enjoyed a meal in the winter that you raised yourself in the summer, you'll know exactly what this song is talking about. This is called Canned Goods. Let the wild winter winds bellow and blow, I'm as warm as any July toad. Peaches on the shelf, potatoes in the bin, supper ready, everybody come on in, taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Oh, Grandma put it all in jars. Now it's a fruit cellar down below. Watch her heading down you go. Peaches on the shelf, potatoes in the bin. Supper ready, everybody come on in, taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Oh, Grandma put it all in jars. I know that you may be weary and you don't give a damn, but I bet you never tasted her blackberry jam. Peaches on the shelf, potatoes in the bin. Supper ready, everybody come on in, taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Oh, Grandma put it all in jars. She's got that magic in her, you know what I mean. She puts the sun and the rain in with her beans. Peaches on the shelf, potatoes in the bin. Supper ready, everybody come on in, taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Ah, Grandma put it all in jars. When I go down to see Grandma, I gain a lot of weight. With her dear hands, she gives me plate after plate. She cans the pickles, sweet and dill, and the sounds of the whippoorwill and the morning dew. The evening moon, I really gotta go down and see her soon. 'Cause canned goods that you get at the store, now they ain't got the summer in them anymore. You bet your Grandma, just as sure as you're born, I'll take some more potatoes and a thunderstorm. Peaches on the shelf, potatoes in the bin. Supper ready, everybody come on in, taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Taste a little of the summer. Ah, Grandma put it all in jars. Makes me hungry just thinking about it. Now, life on the farm was much different than urban life then or today. Socializing, though, was a big part of life. And one of the main ways to do that was through the local square dance. Every community had one. And I interviewed a number of folks that were involved. Homer Biedenbender used to be an old fiddle player that played for many of those dances. Glenn Hanning was an old-time square dance caller. He taught me wonderful things about dancing and the calls themselves. Now, of course, in the early days, and frankly, well into the 1960s, when square dances were still popular, you didn't have a lot of the things that we take for granted today. In the early days, you didn't have a microphone. You didn't have an amplifier. You had to make enough noise. And of course, it had to be live. No recorded music. So you might get a fiddle player, you might get a banjo player, maybe a guitarist, but if you were really lucky, you got an instrument like this one. Now, friends, what I have right here is an old hammered dulcimer, built in rural Illinois, a little town called Vermont, Illinois, back right around 1880. It's 140 years old. It was built by a man named Daniel Van Antwerp, who not only built dulcimers, but he also had his own one-man traveling medicine show. He traveled all around Illinois, performing on his dulcimers and selling them right out of the wagon. Now, this is one of his old instruments. These are old instruments that go back thousands and thousands of years. They refer to it in the Testament of the Old Bible. And it's very easy to play. You use a pair of wooden hammers, and the idea is to hit the right note at the right time. And it has a rich, ringing sound folks describe as a cross between a harp and a piano. So what I want to do right now is give you a taste of this. Now, when I interviewed old musicians, I mentioned Glenn Hanning a moment ago. He was the old-time square dance caller, and he told me that there was one song in Illinois that was the most popular one of all. He said, if you went to a square dance between 1870 and 1930, you were guaranteed to hear this song, and they still play it today. So I'll give you a taste of that one right now. This is the old tune, Golden Slippers, and I'll try to set that so you can see a little bit of how I'm playing it. Now that doesn't sound too bad for being 140 years old. And actually it sounds a lot different than modern day dulcimers. The old dulcimers like this one have a sharp, bright tone, which of course you needed to be heard in a live setting above stomping feet and hooping and hollering voices. One of Illinois' best hammer dulcimers players is a man named Bill Robinson, and he told me he learned on exactly that type of instrument, a Van Antwerp dulcimer. He also tells me I always play it the wrong way. So, well, one of the things I learned about rural America, and I've experienced this firsthand, is that they maintained that sense of community I referred to earlier, long past the time it kind of eroded away in urban America. Folks take care of one another. I remember when I first moved into rural Illinois, I was kind of surprised if you drive down a gravel road, the guy coming forward towards you would wave. And one of the locals eventually explained to me, well, you know, you got to be friendly to everybody. He might be the guy you're looking to have pull you out of the ditch sometime. And of course, it extended beyond that. Now, I mentioned that musicians have long had a connection with farm life and farm ways. Poets have as well. And perhaps our greatest poet here in Illinois was Carl Sandburg. And what I would like to do at the moment is combine a Carl Sandburg poem with an original song of my own. And this is a song that I wrote about a real-life situation that took place in Morris, Illinois. I believe it was back in the late 80s or early 90s. And interestingly enough, the exact same thing happened last fall outside of Quincy, Illinois, and again at another location somewhere else in Illinois. So the poem is called The Illinois Farmer, and my song is The Final Harvest. Bury this old Illinois farmer with respect. He slept the Illinois nights of his life after days of work in Illinois cornfields. Now he goes on a long sleep. The wind he listened to in the corn silk and the tassels, the wind that combed his red beard, 0 mornings when the snow lay white on the yellow ears in the bushel basket by the corn crib. The same wind will now blow over the place here, where his hands must dream of Illinois corn. The early streaks of dawn touching the horizon, my eyes were playing tricks out on the road. So I pull into the cafe just this side of Morris for a cup of strong black coffee, tired to the bone. Staring down the steam rising from my cup and saucer, I was trying to clear my ears of that highway sound, when a man in faded coveralls and well-worn leather work boots came in and took a stool a few seats down. The waitress brought him coffee. He ordered up the special. She asked, "What brings you out in this autumn blow?" And he said, "You know Gerald Steffes, the old man killed here late last summer." She sat down, her pad and pencil. She said, "I don't think so. But he was just like any one of us, an ordinary farmer. He was a common man with a heart and a calloused hand. And he hoped to live just long enough to pay off all his mortgage and then to reap one final harvest from his land. He wanted one final harvest where no banker held his paper. Used to say that was his heart's desire, Just one final harvest where the land he worked was his alone. And then he quit that farming business. He'd sell his tractors and retire. And he said, you know, we nearly made it, stirring sugar in his coffee. Just 5 more years till he was free and clear. And that darn old John Deere tractor rolled and crushed him here last August and left his wife and family helpless at the worst time of the year. Well, a few of us are meeting just to help him bring the crops in. You know, he did the same for all of us before. Then he finished up his coffee, slowly rose and he paid his ticket. He left a corner tip, headed towards the door. The sun was up and shining as I pulled back on that highway. I slipped it into gear and I headed west. But as I topped the hill, a couple miles past that diner, I saw a sight below me, took away my breath. Gleaming in the morning light in rolling fields of amber, more than 30 combines in a row, crawling across the cornfields like a swarm of hungry locusts, blowing silage all around like it was snow. There were grain trucks overflowing, bound for Morris and Manuka. There were pickups parked a mile along the ditch. As I stared there at that eerie sight, you know, it seemed a fitting tribute to an ordinary man and a simple wish. He wanted one final harvest where no banker held his paper. Used to say that was his heart's desire. Just one final harvest where the land he worked was his alone. Then he quit that farming business. He sell his tractors and retire. I had the privilege of performing that song in Morris, Illinois, with members of the family in the audience. But I'll tell you what, that was a nerve-wracking experience. Fortunately, they did like it. Well, here's a song I just love performing, particularly in a show about farming. Because, friends, this song was quite literally written on a tractor. Now, it's a song I know you'll recognize. It was written by a man named Albert E. Brumley, written in 1929. And he was sitting on an old farm-all tractor pulling a 2-bottom plow, working up a 5-acre field. Now, any of you folks that have ever been around 2-bottom plows and 5-acre fields know he had a long, hard, hot day's work ahead of him. And he was about halfway through the day's labor when he was inspired with the words and the music that we would come to know as the song, "I'll Fly Away." Now, being a good, hard-working Midwestern farmer, Brumley knew he couldn't stop the day's labors for something as trivial as a song. Not even a great song. Friends, not even a great gospel song. But Brumley was also nobody's fool. He knew he'd hit on a good lick there. So there he is. All afternoon, he's just plowing away on that tractor. But while he's doing that, he's humming that song over and over in his head. So there he is, a plowing and a humming and a plowing and a humming until finally, about the time the sun sets down below the hills there, he finishes up all 5 acres. He drives the tractor on up to the barnyard, carefully disconnecting the plow and getting it all hosed off and ready for the next day's labor. Heads on up to the farmhouse on the top of the hill, making sure he scrapes the mud off of his boots so as to not needlessly annoy his wife by tracking mud into her clean kitchen. Walks into the kitchen, washing his face and hands in his wife's clean kitchen sink, and friends, it is then and only then that he sits down and writes out the words and music to the song he's been singing all day long. And this is what he comes up with. Now some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a land on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. Well, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, bye bye, I'll fly away. Now when the shadows of this life have grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars is flown, I'll fly away. Well, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Here we go. Now just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy will never end. I'll fly away. Well, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Well, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Oh, that's a great song. I always enjoy playing that one. Now, I've lived in urban settings and rural settings, and I've learned that there's a big difference in perspective on where you live, particularly in terms of things like, say, the weather. Now, if you happen to be up in Chicago, you get up in the morning, you turn on WGN, you see what Tom Skilling has to say, and you dress accordingly. And that's it. But if you're a farmer, weather is an entirely different order of magnitude in your life. You work in it. You rely on it. So your whole attitude towards weather is completely different. When I lived outside of Macomb, Illinois, in an old farmhouse west of town near Cuba Corners, it was part of Illinois where it was pancake flat. And the porch on the front of that house faced due west. And I would get up in the morning. I didn't have TV. I'd walk out to the front porch. I would look towards the southwest. And as far away as I could see, which would be about 5 to 6 hours away, whatever was happening there was what's going to be happening later on that day here. It's an entirely different mindset. Well, there is a friend of mine who is a songwriter and a farmer in South Dakota. As a matter of fact, he is the official South Dakota state folk song writer. And Governor Pritzker, if you're listening, I would be delighted to do that job here in Illinois. But he wrote a song that looks at weather from the perspective of a farmer. And it's called God, It's Great When It Rains. God, it's great when it rains. Hope it lasts all day. A few arthritic pains, that's a small price to pay. God, it's great when it rains. Think I'll head into town, shop the stores along Main, just walking around. God, it's great when it rains. Back the car from the shed, all that county road might complain, so I'll drive to the pasture instead. And when the sun comes out in a day or two, the whole wide world's gonna look brand new. Grass gonna grow and the bees gonna buzz, blossoms exploding, and it's all because it's great when it rains. Roll up my pants to my knees, don't you worry about stains. Feel the mud my toes squeeze. God, it's great when it rains. Worms all over the place, no ketchup, just plain. Robin stuffing her face. When that sun comes out in a day or two, the whole wide world's gonna look brand new. Grass gonna grow and the bees gonna buzz, blossoms explode, and it's all because it's great when it rains. My city friends don't think so, spoils their tennis games. Ah, but what do they know? God, it's great when it rains. God, it's great when it rains. Out here on the plains, God, it's great when it rains. All righty, the rural point point of view on the weather, if you will. Well, friends, I've got time to do just one last song. I want to thank the Illinois Humanities Council and the Byron Public Library District for the opportunity to share this show with you through this live streaming platform. You know, these are difficult times, and we are exploring new ways to communicate and stay connected, and I am delighted to be working with these two partners to make that happen. Please stay tuned to a couple of things. My Facebook page, Chris Vallillo Music. I'll be doing ongoing performances, and you can see when and where that will be through that site. Also stay tuned to the Illinois Humanities Council's website, because we're beginning to look at ways to perhaps archive these performances, perhaps bring others into this new creative process. So, with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with one last song. And as we deal with this terrible COVID-19 problem right now, we are beginning to recognize just how critically important farmers are to the nation's security. Now, this seemed obvious to me years and years ago, but you know, to folks that are not used to the idea of actually having to deal with somebody producing the food we eat, it's coming as a rude awakening. Well, it's not the first time we've dealt with this. In the years following the Civil War here in Illinois, our state went through a great period of growth and expansion, peace and prosperity. Soldiers came back from the war to begin families, take over family farms, and create new businesses. But in the midst of all of this prosperity, the Illinois farmers were getting the short end of the stick. Even though the Industrial Revolution was producing new ways to grow and harvest your crops and transport them, they weren't getting even a little bit of that profit. Most farmers were barely eking out an existence, even though their yields kept rising and rising. So they got together and they created the Grange movement to see what they could do to deal with that problem. Now, they ultimately became so powerful that in 1871, they got the Illinois legislature to pass laws that would limit the amount they could be charged for storing and shipping their commodities to the marketplace. And for the first time, the American farmer was on an equal footing and began to do well. Now, music was a big part of their campaign. And this is a song that was their call to arms. It's called